area. It's the Inside Scoop, EmeraldPlanet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the EmeraldPlanet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the EmeraldPlanet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, identifying the best and 1,000 best practices that are making a difference as we move forward through the 21st century. And as we look around the globe and determining exactly what we need to do as we take on 2 billion more souls on the planet and go to 9 billion, how are we going to be able to take care of them? And we have a gentleman that's been working with colleges and universities for a number of years that's actually addressing these issues as they bring university students together from the United States and actually around the globe to discuss how we're going to progress and to accommodate all these new people. His name is Michael Eaton. He is the Executive Director of the National Collegiate Conference Association, NCCA, and is also the sponsor of the National Model United Nations. So Michael, welcome.
Dr. Sam, it's a pleasure to be here with you and to see you again.
Well, I tell you, it's a wonderful work that you're actually doing through the National Model United Nations. But tell us about the NCCA first, and then we'll get into the Model UN.
Well, the NCCA is a nonprofit sponsor, but really it was students who came together and cared about issues like the environment, disarmament, trying to build world peace, advancing the cause of the United Nations. And so what they did was form this nonprofit to assure the sustainability of having Model United Nations, originally in New York and then in Washington, D.C., as well, and really around the world.
Okay, but looking at that, I know that you've really invested a lot of time and energy and actually resources in being a sponsor of the National Model United Nations. Tell us what that is, and then why would you make such an investment of time and effort in joining these two together almost?
Well, the organization really helps to promote student learning, so advancing understanding of the United Nations, because we believe as people understand the UN, they'll understand, particularly here in this country, the importance of having this space for dialogue. And the students that began the program, and I was a participant back in the 1990s, and obviously I'm a true believer that I'm still involved, but providing that opportunity to teach others about really speaking first and hitting later, and that plays out in the discussions and the dialogues, and we hope in many ways we impact people's lives, be they future diplomats, future business leaders, and the environment is an important discussion point for us as well.
Well, I know looking at all the different discussion points, because I was up and was a speaker and one of your conferences at the United Nations and in New York. But looking at it, what different types of topics do you have? I know we're tying in the environment through this, but there are a number of topics that you have. So what's the breadth and the depth of these topics that the students are developing?
Well, what we try and do is provide an opportunity for people who are interested in the environment, but also in disarmament, be it sustainable energy, be it human rights, the Security Council, and all of these things impact one another. So hopefully college students can come and whatever their particular focus is, they'll find something there. One of the things I'm most proud of is that we had an entire conference, a Model United Nations, focused on the environment. So rather than just having the United Nations Environment Program or now doing the UNEA Assembly, rather than just giving that specific format, we actually in the Galapagos Islands had a conference where people were talking only about the environment and then combining that with service projects, so it's not just discussion and debate, but a chance for people to really feel like they're making a difference physically as well as intellectually.
Yeah, well, looking at the scope and scale, just looking at the people that are involved in this with this slide that we have in our backdrop here, Michael, it's very impressive. But what are some of the very specific projects and topics have you talked about as far as the environment is concerned? And then some of the service projects, which is an extension of these discussions that go on, in the UN and then other places like in Washington, D.C.
Sustainable energy, is an important topic that we've been discussing, and because it's college students' education about the environment is important as well. And sometimes the ideas are are, how do you help provide training? How do you continue to make an impact? And then looking at the bureaucracy, how do you continue to promote ideas for a more sustainable future? One of the differences that I don't think people always understand about Model United Nations compared to the US Congress or a parliamentary body is we're really asking people to try and represent the interests of member states. It isn't Mr. Smith goes to Washington in a debate tournament to say, well, I care about the environment. I hope everybody under the age of 40, under the age of 50, under whatever age or over whatever age cares about the environment. But what's unique about the United Nations is that it's member states. So, Ambassador Powers can't do what President Obama, or shouldn't do what President Obama doesn't want, but all the other leaders there as well, checking back with the capitals to really find what can move forward to improve the future. And that's what these young people are experiencing by learning how to negotiate, how to articulate these important points, but then how to also move forward and convince others in that context.
Well, I know that the topics are dealt with in a direct fashion, also indirect, so you're getting all these critical issues put in there. But tell us a little bit about the process. How do they select the teams? Who makes up the teams? And then how do they determine what country they're going to represent? And then how do they present this for the greater body?
So the student organizing team that we have, and some of the students who participated are up on the screen now, I realize, they'll register for the conference. They'll say, we would really like to represent Rwanda or Mexico or Canada or the United Kingdom. And then the organizers will look at their rationales and give them a country assignment. And at the same time, often graduate students will be preparing the background materials. So they're looking at, here are the topics we're going to focus on, because this last conference we've just finished is 3 days in Washington. Well, the General Assembly has 3 months to try and get through some topics. And in 3 days, we need to narrow the focus a bit, give them some starting points, and then what's interesting for us as organizers is to see what the students participants do with those topics, the ideas they have, opportunities for creativity. So they move forward, put forth their ideas, they vote, they object, they make speeches on them, and look at those. One of the things we've tried to do to be green ourselves is publish those materials electronically, as opposed to 20 years ago where we mailed out paper copies. These last 2 years have been the first that we're trying to use wireless internet in the hotels so that students can share their ideas in Google Docs and Dropbox. So again, we're trying to reduce our own imprint on the environment.
Yeah, I know this is something, Michael, you've really been working on actually the last 5 years, because we talked about it that long ago.
It took us a couple years to really get going. I apologize.
That's okay, but looking at it from the standpoint of how, a zero carbon footprint is really what you're getting to. But what other countries are actually involved in the National Model UN?
Well, we have schools coming throughout our conferences from 44 different member states of the United Nations. So they're bringing delegations from there. Some of the schools in the US and in North America, it's not just American students that are participating, it's also some international students that are coming as part of those teams. So we really do see, probably more than 100 countries represented in the conferences, and it really is impressive. I'm sorry that we're here in the studio rather than coming to you live from the conference, but to look out, really the speakers that we have come from the State Department and elsewhere always speak about how it is a small example of the United Nations. But we had delegations this past weekend from Nigeria, from Turkey, from Russia, from France, from Japan, from the Philippines, from Mexico. I'm leaving several out now, and I'll be embarrassed if
No, that's okay, because that's a good example. Yes.
But that diversity, I think, makes it more real for the Americans as well.
Well, looking at that, I know the whole thing about integration of the international students into the American campuses, and you have large and small, so you have small colleges and you have very large universities. How do you balance out between the smaller colleges, the large universities, so that there you have a diversity but have voices from students regardless of the institutions of higher learning they come from?
The size of the teams or the delegations that come are very similar, really. So I think if it's a larger university, it's that much more competitive to be part of the team. But we actually rely on faculty members to help select the students that will best represent their school, and also then those schools are providing an opportunity for them to meet students from all over the world. And if we're doing our jobs well, and I think we are, we're making the world a little bit smaller, because in addition to these people meeting peers that care about these same issues, they're also realizing that somebody halfway around the world likes the same sort of music, and it's harder to make stereotypes and generalizations about people from somewhere else when you've met them in realize they're just as good as people as the ones you grew up with.
Well, looking at the people, how do you foster so that long term these people actually are developing their good old girl, the good old boy network, so that as they move through their professional careers, they're looking back on their university life, of course, but also they're looking back on the National Model United Nations, saying this was such a huge part of my life and preparation for the future. How do you network them so that they're doing it over the next 15, 20, 50 years?
You know what, it's been amazing with information technology. We're constantly getting emails and texts and posts on our Facebook site saying, I remember participating. We had one alumnus who just was confirmed a month ago as the new U.S. ambassador to Singapore, and people writing back to us and saying, I really started to understand this. An hour ago we had a closing speaker, Trita Parsi from the Iranian American Association, or president of the Iranian American Association, talking about how his start in Model UN prepared him to help represent Sweden on the Security Council, and really gave these students an idea of reflect on what you're doing here, because that leadership is going to translate into jobs and people understanding that you're open to new ideas, and then share that. And I think that's part of moving forward, is the reflection that faculty advisors help with too.
Right. Well, Michael, looking at it and then talking about faculty, that's really a key point, is the faculty members have to be intimately involved. The students, of course, are doing their own research and all that, but the faculty really is involved. How do you select the faculty? They're going to work with these different teams, and what are their obligations?
And I should explain in a little bit more detail.
Different universities, to do all this.
Different universities participate in different ways. Some bring faculty advisors and receive credit, and some are student groups that are just that committed on their own. So it's not a requirement to have a faculty advisor. The school I went to, our university, we came just with a student club, but it's the commitment of the students, and if they can tap into a faculty member, all the better. But really, that students care about these issues, want to move it forward, and want to meet other people from different countries. It goes from there.
Now, looking at this, you have about 30 seconds left. How can the students watching this, their university or college has not been involved in the past, how can they become involved?
Visit our website, nmun.org, and there are links from unausa.org as well to other great Model UN programs around the world.
Can you do both of those right slower?
N like Nancy, M like Michael, U like Uncle, N like Nancy. Well, National Model United Nations, nmun.org, or the United Nations Association of the United States. So both of those are excellent resources for people trying to get involved in Model UN at any level.
Well, I know this is something just like these faces that we're seeing here in this last slide. It's really important to have this type of diversity and to prepare for the future, because the issues are not going to get any less complex.
No, they're not.
Climate change, we're adding 2 billion more people to the planet. It's just amazing. Well, Michael Eaton, who is the Executive Director of the National Collegiate Conference Association and sponsor of the National Model United Nations, thank you for being with us, and thank you for watching as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs, or to make a tax-free donation, contact C. Fripp at AOL.com.
Here, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And we're looking for these 1,000 best practices in 144 countries and try to bring everyone together to determine how we're going to address the issues of severe climate change, of increased populations, the challenges of food and water, basic infrastructure, healthcare, education, and how we're going to deal with that. One of the ways of doing it is actually the National Model United Nations, bringing people together from various colleges and universities around the globe. And we have someone who's been very much involved with this. Her name is Dr. Aubrey L. Westfall. She is Associate Professor of Political Science at Virginia Wesleyan College. And Aubrey, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you here, and I know you've been very busy working with the National Model United Nations, but first tell us about Virginia Wesleyan College University.
Virginia Wesleyan College is a small liberal arts college located in the Hampton Roads region of Virginia. It has a student body of about 1,400 students and quite a few adult study students as well. And those students can choose from around 60 areas of study, 2 of which are probably of particular interest to you, the Environmental Studies program and the Earth and Environmental Science major.
Well, looking at that, I know having the colleges, then we'll get into as far as the Model UN, but looking at a college like Virginia Wesleyan, I know it's integrating environmental studies and looking at climate change across all the curricula. How do you go about doing that so that the students really realize that we have to be concerned about this as we move through the 21st century?
Of course. Well, one way is through the curriculum itself, through several courses that might be dedicated to environmental problems, such as environmental policy analysis, which is offered in my department. Also, there is the Student Government Association heads up several initiatives to help reduce the environmental impact of the college. They do things like putting recycling bins in buildings around campus and also installing or sponsoring the installation of water fountains that are more geared towards the use of reusable water bottles rather than plastic bottles. We also have a student volunteer organization called Marlins Go Green, which has students who are working to increase awareness around campus and also make the campus a more beautiful place.
Well, looking at you've been working with the National Model UN for quite some time. What kind of changes do you see in the students that actually get involved first through their studying and representing their country and then going off to New York or Washington, D.C. or whatever to participate? And how long-term do you think these changes really are?
Well, probably there are several changes which are very much what you would expect. The students at the conference are speaking, giving public speeches, they are negotiating with other delegates, and so the skills they acquire are public speaking skills, teamwork skills, and those kinds of things I think can be very long lasting. But the skill that I particularly am interested in is the development of empathy in our students. When they're at the conference, they're really standing as representatives of other nations, and therefore they're learning about how other nations think and react to policies and how best to represent their interests. In doing this, they develop a real sense of empathy and understanding for how other people think and feel in the world around them, and I think that's wonderful.
Well, Aubrey, looking at that, this is a very curious term, empathy, that you're talking about, because all of a sudden this is becoming, part of conversation, with the big United Nations and governments and parliaments and congresses all around the globe. And, it's kind of a harsh world we're in now when you have all this conflict, the lack of water and climate change, and all of a sudden we're saying we need to be empathetic. So how, as a political scientist, how should we define that term, and how should we infuse that then into the experience the university and college students are having at a place like the National Model United Nations?
Right. Well, when I use the word empathy, I'm thinking beyond the emotional feelings, but really more towards realizing that your experience is not the same experience that everybody else has. And us here in the United States, in the land of plenty, we have a very different experience than people living in other regions of the world that don't have so many resources. And this experience exposes students to that reality and makes them aware that other people are having very different lives than they're having. And that's the first step, I think, to seeking out some real change.
Well, looking at, I know you work with immigrants, and this is one of the focuses you have in both your research but also in your teaching and the courses. How are you integrating immigrants and the curricula that you have at Virginia Wesleyan, and then extending that into the Model UN?
The largest body of my work concerns how policies affect the daily lives of immigrants. And this is fundamental to what the United Nations does. We are talking about policies, global policies that can change the lives of people all around the world, whether or not they are in their home state or traveling between states. And so I think there's a very direct connection there. The world is globalizing at an alarming rate, and people are always on the move, and we are encountering people from different cultures and societies all the time. And I think these experiences speak directly to the lives my students lead and to my own life, and it's translated quite easily into the classroom, especially when I'm teaching on human rights, international organizations, and these kinds of things.
Now, looking at your students, what are some of the things that they're looking at that they find it's critical to them, it's of a real interest, they really want to study about this, and they may want to carry forward in their careers? That's
an excellent question. I think by and large they're most interested in international cooperation and increasing international cooperation. We at Virginia Wesleyan have a large female student body. It's about 60% female, and so concerns about gender equality are especially prevalent. They're also interested in several of the security issues, particularly non-proliferation, and these things come up again and again. They are also extremely passionate about helping others lead lives of human dignity and promoting human rights around the world. They get very passionate about injustices that they see.
Well, looking at that, what are some of the other countries that Virginia Wesleyan is involved with, inviting students here, but maybe even sending students overseas?
Of course, we are developing a study abroad program right now. It's in its early phases, and we've sent students all over the world, to Australia, all over Europe, into Latin America, and into Asia. We're really working on developing a study abroad program in China. I actually visited China myself last summer to look at a program there, and we're hoping to be hosting some Chinese students next year through a special program with the Recreation and Leisure Studies Department. So we're especially reaching out to China at this moment.
Now, looking at the National Model United Nations, I know this is something I participated in a few years ago in New York City, and at the UN this was all about the environment. But how are we infusing the environment into the studies like geography, history, economics, the sciences and all that at Virginia Wesleyan, so that when they come out of there, they're very well-rounded, they have a complex understanding of what the world's all about, but we're really preparing these citizens for the 21st century?
I think you cannot disconnect the environment from all of these issues. Without sustainable environmental practices, we will have poor economies and we will have destroyed political systems. And so the main thing we do is to infuse the environment into the existing curriculum, into existing classes, and to teach it that way. We also offer special interest courses, like courses on water, for example, water sustainability, that help draw the interest in. And there are several faculty who are particularly interested in these issues and can offer these kinds of classes.
I know you talked about the environmental studies, and of course you have the hard sciences at Virginia Wesleyan College. How are those working to look at this whole notion of environmental quality, but also the very practical aspects of, soil, air, and water pollution, and how we actually develop the systems or the best practices that are going to address those as we go over the next, say, 5, 10, 15 years?
Absolutely. The environmental studies major is an interdisciplinary major, so it aims to approach the issue from several perspectives, including philosophic, economic, political, historic, and of course with the perspective of the sciences. The Earth and Environmental Science major focuses directly on these issues, the more applied scientific issues. And we at Virginia Wesleyan have a heavy emphasis on undergraduate research, and so students are actually conducting real hard scientific research on the environment and the kinds of things that are of greatest concern to us.
Well, looking at your students and how you're getting them prepared or yearly preparing them for the National Model UN, what kinds of processes do they go through, and do they have a great interaction with the faculty? This is something that's they develop their own study teams and they work that way, or is it a combination? How do they get ready for this?
The Model United Nations team must be very individually driven, and so there is a lot of individual motivation that has to come with it. But for the first time this year, we've incorporated the team into a full class. So this semester, it was incorporated into my international organizations class as part of the curriculum. And next semester, when we go to New York City, there will be a whole class focused explicitly on that conference. So it's becoming more and more an intrinsic part of the curriculum, which makes it, I think, a better educational experience for the students.
Well, looking at your campus, it's a fairly small college.
That's right.
And you're actually going head to head with, very large universities with 50, 60, sometimes 70,000 students.
That's right.
Some that have 100,000, online students. How do you compete head to head with them, and what are you giving them that you feel like it's an intrinsic nature of Virginia Wesleyan, it's important for their future education, but also to help better the planet?
The main thing that Virginia Wesleyan has that perhaps these larger research institutions may not have is direct access to faculty. We have a very small faculty-student ratio. It's 12-to-1. And so the faculty are highly involved in the student's life, and Model UN is no exception. With that faculty guidance, I think our students can compete with the best in the world. We also have, to incorporate the environmental component, we have the faculty there to help make those linkages when they might not be quite so obvious to students. But the environment is always relevant and should always be linked to any topic that's being discussed.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Now, looking at it, we're just about run out of time. We have about 60 seconds left.
Okay.
So what do you see as far as your college is concerned, or where it's heading over the next 5, 10, 15 years as we start to reach out and get prepared for a planet with 9 billion people on it?
I can think of two big areas where the college is heading, and one, like many liberal arts colleges, is that Virginia Wesleyan is internationalizing. They're working to internationalize the student body, the curricular offerings, and the educational opportunities. Secondly, we're working to improve the high impact practices in the classroom. These are those one-on-one kinds of activities that really reap high educational benefits, and those we expect will better prepare our students to go out there and make a difference in a world that's confronting so many environmental challenges.
How do the future students find you?
They find us through our website,
which is
www.vwc.edu.
Once more?
www.vwc.edu.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, Dr. Aubrey L. Westfall is the Associate Professor of Political Science at Virginia Wesleyan College. Thank you for being with us. And thank you for being with us as we look at higher education, but also the National Model of the United Nations and how it's affecting us as we create the Emerald Planet.
One day these rats were playing in the woods.
One lit some matches and that's no good.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rigged out money. Nothing very nice. Homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look at a planet that's going from 7 to 9 billion souls by 2050. And so how we're going to address the various issues that we're going to be facing, not only just severe climate change, but also the food, the fuel, and the fiber that's going to be needed to take care of all these people, to provide the basic infrastructure of education and health care, and everything else is needed by humankind. We have a gentleman sitting with me that's been working on these issues for a number of years, not only through his own organization, but the National Model United Nations. This is Dr. Shelton. He goes by Shelly L. Williams, who is the president of the Osgood Center for International Studies. And Shelly, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here, Sam.
Glad to have you, and that's an outstanding logo that you have there. But tell us a little bit about the Osgood Center. What is it?
The Osgood Center is a nonprofit international education organization that conducts short-term programs in Washington, D.C., and Honolulu, and in China and Germany.
Well, looking at that, what's the origin of this name, Osgood? That's a very unique name.
Well, it's a good name in Washington, D.C. Robert Osgood was the dean of the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, and his wife was the head of the Johns Hopkins nursing program. And they were particularly important to me in my life, and I thought in establishing the center that to honor the Osgoods and their connection with students and their care about public policy issues, domestic and international, was a good way to do that.
Tell us, I want to go back to this. Usually I don't do this, but I think this is special. But looking at this logo that you have, there's this gold diamond right in the middle of the O.
Right.
What is the meaning of that?
Well, it looks good, but the truth is we felt like that we were the diamond in the heart of Washington, D.C., because we say that we are the best foreign policy program for students in Washington, D.C. that they could have, and that we were going to give them the best that they could get in the business.
You see, you didn't think I knew that, did you? That's why I wanted to bring out that diamond. So anyway, I just love this photograph, and the Osgood Center is in the middle of everything. Dr. Shelly Williams is in the middle of everything. Tell us this connection between the Osgood Center, the capital, the government of the United States, and then we're going to transition into this National Model United Nations. What's the connections?
Well, the public policy, first of all, Mr. Osgood himself was in the middle of Washington, D.C. issues. He served on the National Security Council, he served in the State Department, he was advisors to people on the Hill. And the people who've gone through the Osgood Center, many of them have ended up working on the Hill. We began this National Model UNDC this past weekend with a session at the Congressional Visitor Center Auditorium. And we were hosted there by Congressman Donnie Davis of Illinois. And so in terms of public policy issues, as a nonpartisan organization with Republicans and Democrats together on the board, and in the program, we feel like we touch on all bases.
Looking at the Osgood Center and the various topics that you have, we've been involved actually with you in some of these, and it's been a great pleasure to do that. But how does the environment and severe climate change fit into the discourse, but also the study that's going on? Because I know you're really focused as far as the international studies, but this is a very local thing, and at the same time, it's very international.
think globally, act locally, and yes, we've dealt with energy, with environment, and with issues throughout the existence of the Osgood Center. We really focus on national model APEC as well, Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, which deals with energy and environmental issues in a certain geographic region, the Pacific area, but also on public policy issues facing the United States, nuclear energy, waste disposal, environmental issues, water, all kinds of things. We have been in it, the thick of things since day one.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And of course, being a specialist in nuclear regulation yourself,
yes,
I know you have this in there. So during these studies looking at nuclear power, this is something that, is really a worldwide topic, in many countries like France, Germany, Japan, as well as the United States. What are some of the concerns that people are having about that? And do you think we need to really be that worried about nuclear power and energy as we go through the 21st century?
Nuclear power is like all power. It can be used for good or for ill, and there can be accidents, but there has to be a great attention to safety. There has to be great attention to waste disposal, great attention to the various ways of interacting with society and with other forms of energy. And so you can do it right or you can do it very wrong. Every single way of creating energy also creates possibilities for waste or emissions or something negative. It's how it's regulated, it's how safely it's used, and how much we are aware of emerging issues.
Now, looking at the Osgood Center, I know you're here in the middle of Washington, D.C. You're also very active with the National Model UN. And how do you progress there so that actually the Osgood Center really hosts these and really becomes a leader? Because I know that you don't just participate in anything. You want to be a leader in whatever you're doing.
Well, I have been involved with National Model UN for 30 years this year. I began as a faculty member at a small liberal arts college in Texas, and we won awards for 20 consecutive years, and I became a member of the national board long before I ever created the Osgood Center. When we created the Osgood Center, the National Model UN in New York was approaching 5,000 delegates. And we participated in the decision to divide the sessions in New York into 2 sessions and to begin creating National Model UNs in other places. Today they go to Ecuador, they go to Prague, they go to Korea, they go to the West Coast, they've been in Lille, France, but the first one they ever did was National Model UN DC. And we began in a small way with about 250 to 275 delegates, and this past weekend, about 2 hours ago, we ended the 6th National Model UN DC with 700 delegates.
I think it's absolutely fantastic, and of course you're reaching out the world from within Washington, D.C. yourself. So in essence what you're doing is you're reaching the world, but also you're bringing the world into Washington, D.C. What do you see, Shelly, as the long-term benefits of this, having this combination of internationalizing the National Model UN program in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I started my academic career, my life as a Texan in Deep West Texas with energy all around me, and I found as I grew older the need to know more about the world. And I created our International Studies program at Austin College in the early 1970s to try to take young Texans into the world. And coming to Washington, D.C. seemed like a logical thing. The next step was to involve students from other countries in it. And I discovered that people are people, and that they needed to know about each other. I think part of the benefit is we listen to experts, we go to embassies, we talk to people like you, but as equally as important as that is meeting each other, establishing relationships, and working together a long time. You ask sometimes, how do you know that these people stay stay hooked together. I've had 6 marriages in the programs that I've done in Washington, D.C., and many long-term friendships. And now we have Facebook. It ties us together, and I know that my students are still working together and talking about issues constantly, daily.
Looking at this, talking about this outreach and using the social media, how are the international students then, even though we have the social media, how are they personally staying in close contact with those from the United States, you know, the NAFTA, the United States, Mexico, Canada, for long-term benefit for everyone?
Well, social media is a big part of it, but we don't think that we can just stay in Washington, D.C. We go abroad. We're going to be holding programs in Honolulu and in China upcoming, but we've also been to Germany, we've been to Hong Kong, we've been to Guangzhou, we've been to Xi'an, we've been to Tianjin, we've been to Beijing, and we talked this weekend at this very conference with a professor and his students from the Philippines, and we talked with one from Japan, so we're on the road.
Yeah, looking at that, that's absolutely fantastic, and of course as the climate changes, the world changes. Now we may be holding these in Antarctica and Arctic.
Yes,
you know, who knows where we're going to be?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? We will go. We want to be everyone's Washington, D.C. program, because a lot of large state universities and famous universities have Washington, D.C. Campuses or programs, and the Osgood Center should be for everybody else. Those who cannot come and establish a presence here, we want to work with them and help them.
Yeah, and I know that this is something we're just focusing right now as far as the National Model UN.
Sure.
But also you're doing this year-round. So what are some of the other conferences and activities that are going on, you know, the other 11 months of the year when people are not physically here in Washington, D.C.?
Well, we have 13 conferences a year, and we educate somewhere between 12 and 1,500 students. We do leadership, we do international economics and energy, we do media and politics, we do foreign policy, and of course we do Model APEC and Model UN.
Mm-hmm. Looking at Model APEC, I know this is something that's in the Asian area.
Yes.
Why taking that focus?
Well, first of all, the State Department asked us to.
Well, that's a very good reason.
They asked us to, and it was the year that the United States was the host APEC member economy. They don't go by nation state, they go by member economy. And my own academic background was in Asia. I've written books on India and on Japan, and I've studied China and visited China many times. So it seemed like a logical thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Looking at the future, we only have about 1 minute left, about 60 seconds. What do you see for the Osgood Center over the next 5, 10, 15 years as we do move towards 2050?
Well, we're going to try to establish institutional relationships with more kinds of organizations like the American Council for International Education, like the East-West Center, like other universities, and we're going to try to stabilize a number of programs that we do and grow the conferences that we do now instead of adding to them. We think we've reached maximum capacity, but we want to reach more people through the same number of programs.
Yeah. Okay. How do people, we only have about 30 seconds left. How do people find you, Shelly Williams?
www.osgoodcenter, osgoodcenter.org.
I think it's absolutely fantastic, and thank you for being with us and sharing it. And the eyes of these young people that we have in this slide, Shelly, is really the future where we're going around the globe, and certainly thank you for sharing with us. This is Dr. Shelly L. Williams, who is the president of Osgood Center for International Studies, and we'd like to thank you for being with us as we come to you from Washington, D.C., looking around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo.
I would like to speak English better.
Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
El Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals,
ayuda ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome back to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV as we come to you weekly looking at 144 different nations and 1,000 best practices, the technologies and the services and the products are going to address the issues of the 21st century. We have three people that are here to talk about how we're actually going to be able to train the next generations that are going to be the decision makers, the elected officials, and also the community servants that are going to help us to take care of a planet with 9 billion souls by 2050. And possibly we'll have almost 12 billion people by the end of this century. And so how are we going to take care of all these people and have an increasing quality of life, not just an existence? And so I have right beside me, this is Michael Eaton, who is the Executive Director of the National Collegiate Conference Association, NCCA, and also the sponsor of the National Model United Nations. Right beside him is Dr. Aubrey L. Westfall, who is Associate Professor of Political Science at Virginia Wesleyan College. And then my good friend and Rotarian, Dr. Shelton Shelly L. Williams, President of the Osgood Center for International Studies. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Glad to have you on the Emerald Planet. Michael, talking about the National Model UN, we've talked in the past about the people that participate and the university students and all that. But how do you see that through this you're actually shaping the policies that we need to really get us through the 21st century, but in a way that people are actually having an increased quality of life, not just existing?
Well, I think today's students get a bit of a bad rap. People think that they're self-involved and worrying about their own careers, but the students that we see get involved in Model UN, you can tell they care about the future. They are going to be those future civil servants. So we're providing them this initial forum where they can debate ideas, and they get inspired by those ideas to do additional research, to go to graduate school, to go on for a career that can help make a difference. And I think those are the students, hopefully, that you see in their classroom, I see them in the conference, is there is more of a commitment to that future than I think they're given credit for.
Looking at this, and of course Michael is the spokesman for the CCA and the National Model UN, but looking at your work from a perspective of a college, how do you see, Aubrey, as the National Model UN, how do you see that molding, shaping, and creating policies, not just reflecting policies?
Well, I think, as Michael said, it's really we're shaping the policy makers rather than the policies themselves. We're bringing up a generation who's engaged, who's knowledgeable, who's experienced with negotiation and with compromise, and that's the best hope for the future, I think.
Shelly, looking at your Osgood Center, you're in the middle of Washington, D.C., but your personality and everything you do, you're in the middle of everything, and in the universe, if we will. And the people that are coming in, not only are they being educated through the Osgood Center and of course, back to their colleges and universities, but you're actually helping this creation of policies and also introducing them to the people that are doing policies now, but learning how to maybe make more profound changes in the future. How does that work with the Osgood Center?
Well, and not just through the Osgood Center, but through National Model UNDC in particular. I've met my former students who've participated in the program who are now working for the NRDC, who are working for state governments dealing with environmental issues, who are lawyers who work on these environmental issues, who are policy planners. The just immediate past U.S. Trade Representative was a student of mine, Ambassador Ron Kirk. He didn't do Model UN, but we did a model simulation that preceded Model UN, and they became very articulate on policy issues and cared about them, and they understood, as our speaker said at the closing of the conference today, that it involves negotiations and understanding other points of view and giving a little and taking a little as they go along. And I think the students who do Model UN understand that extremely well.
That's fantastic. And Michael, looking at this is something that Aubrey has shared with me in the past as far as this notion of empathy. And this is something that really starting to come out in conversations. There's even research going on this term, and you think of it as almost in a religious context, but yet it's coming out in profound policy. So how does the National Model UN address this, as well as just all the other attributes of humankind, human beings, to make a difference as we move through the 21st century?
I think in two ways. One is just the idea of walking in someone else's shoes, is sort of stepping back and saying, well, here's what I think about this issue, but how might someone from Brazil or Brazil's government or people from another country also view that issue? And through the research, but then coming together in these simulations, meeting people from these different countries, and I think it makes it more complex, but also there's that capacity for empathy of it's not just how it affects me, and we're building that as well, and then letting people be involved in experiential learning, in service learning. All of these types of experience help build character in many ways, and I think that's part of what these types of activities also do.
Well, I know Aubrey, both you and Shelly come out of a small college background. You're both professors in those environments, and but many times you think about the opportunities really is just for the large, multinational, almost universities, the large research institutes. But yet, you're a living example. I know that there's literally hundreds of colleges, the smaller institutions that are involved in that. What is the long-term benefit for colleges such as yours to be involved, and how do you see that either as a complement to or a counterbalance to some resources or assets that would come from a large research institution?
Oh, the benefits are too great to number here, I think, but one of them is our network opportunities for the faculty and for the students themselves. Because it is a small school, the students encounter fewer other students, of course, and at a conference like this, their pool is widened dramatically, and that's a wonderful experience for them, and a wonderful experience for the college too, to get its name out there and to have some recognition amongst people who will be the future leaders of today.
Shelly, looking at the work that you've done, you've been at this almost 30 years, and there'll be many more years that you'll have in doing all this kind of work. But tying together these international students, because the Osgood Center, like everything else, is just becoming more and more internationalized. Yes. How do you see the impact of your scope as you reach around the globe, not only into communities, but in institutions of higher learning, where the people are interacting and learning more about the Model UN?
Well, it's a rage across the globe. Model UN is very, very popular. I personally helped start the Model UN in Far Eastern Russia. I've helped Model UN programs in Japan. I've helped Model UN programs in China and Manila and in Texas. And so I feel like a part of my mission is to build that network among students, all of whom identify with each other. And the fact is, since English is a global language, there's an advantage to it. But the students who do Model UN often want to study abroad and learn languages and go to other places and have an impact there.
Michael, looking at your organization, of course, you have the NCCA, and that gives you phenomenal outreach to colleges and universities around the United States. But really the backbone of what you're doing is the faculty members that get involved, and then of course the student leaders that evolve out of that. How do you involve and reach out to, I mean, literally hundreds of colleges and universities to be a part of what it is that you're doing?
In a very green way, we use the internet. And really, with social media, Facebook, and students talking about each other, some of the phenomenal growth we've seen in the conferences is people recognizing the quality, seeing the pictures online of what their peers have done, and wanting to continue to make a difference. And then after the conference, we're trying to connect to other organizations like the Osgood Center so they can come back and do policy internships in Washington or go on to graduate school through our opportunity fairs, that the experience of the conference can live on through social media, but then can be a starting point to get involved with some of the other organizations, and then as they go back to campus as well.
Shelly, I'm going to jump over to you for just a minute, and looking at the whole notion of involving faculty and community leaders as far as the National Model UN, how do you encourage people to become involved, and what would you say to people that you're looking at through, you know, the domestic international audiences through the EmeraldPlanet TV of get involved?
Well, I would say, first of all, we made the point several times, no college is too small. We have community colleges who are powerhouses in Model UN. We have small liberal arts colleges that people didn't know before they met us, and their students are just every bit as good, bang for the buck. And if you want to get started, contact Michael or contact me to mentor the beginning of your program. Come and observe one of our events, and the best way to learn it is to do it.
Yeah, amen to that. Aubrey, looking at the work that you're doing at Virginia Wesleyan College, I know that when you start, somebody needs to be the champion.
That's right.
But over time, you gradually draw more and more people into it.
Absolutely.
What have you done as far as through your presence, your enthusiasm, to include more and more faculty members? Because now you've gone from, hey, this is a club, to actually it's becoming part of the curriculum.
That's right.
That's a huge leap.
It is a big leap, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I myself am an alumni of the Model UN program, and so I really appreciate its significance. And the whole staff is extremely supportive in a normative sense. They're willing to let the students go and release them from classes. That's really important. Also making connections with faculty who teach in topics that are related to what we do. The business faculty, the environmental faculty, the scientific faculty, all of these people can contribute to what the students are studying and contribute to their research, and they're all very supportive. I'm very grateful.
Well, Shelly, looking at it, what do you see, and I'm going to end up with Michael since you know, he's representing the official organizations here, but what do you see as far as the next 5, 10, 15 years as far as the growth of the National Model UN, and what would you like to see for that?
Well, Michael can answer that question, but the trend has been obvious.
Well, what would you like to see?
Well, the trend is obvious already, and I support it. I think that the idea of going to more geographically diverse places, having a stable set, a rotation of these various programs, and having a broad and diverse participation, that's what we'd like to see.
Michael? We'll close this out. 5 or 10 seconds is what you get.
The diverse participation from across the United States, both people of color, socioeconomic backgrounds, people from other parts of the world, because everyone can benefit from a more peaceful world and a more verdant world.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic, and we're really glad to have the three of you here. This is something Shelly and I have been talking about for about 2 years now, and we're finally able to bring this to fruition, but we want to do this in the future. Are you going to actually have the environment as one of your focuses again, like we did up in New York about 5 years ago?